Really distinctive intro. John Denver, of course, from his arrangement and recording of Darcy Farrow. Beautiful ballad written a few years earlier, 1964, by Steve Gillette and Tom Campbell. And the song kind of came into the musical circles when Ian and Sylvia did it on an album in 1965. Famous Canadian singer-songwriter duo, husband and wife. Responsible for things like Four Strong Winds, Someday Soon, all kinds of stuff. But that sort of brought the song into the public's eye. And luckily, it caught John Denver's. And he did a lot of things to smooth it out and really make it his. Quite different than how Steve Gillette recorded or still plays it now. But I encourage you to check that out because it's kind of cool. But most of us know this from 1972, the album Rocky Mountain High, just chock full of fabulous tunes. Now, John plays this capoed at the 3rd fret in drop D tuning. I'm going to do most of the lesson without it, except that there's a bit of a stretch that happens in here. We'll talk about ways of doing it without the stretch, and the stretch is more difficult, obviously, in standard. If we do this uncapoed. So who knows? I might keep the capo on for the whole lesson. I haven't planned this out I'm going to leave it at the 3rd fret. It just sounds better, and it does make the stretch back. What you have to do is play the 5th fret with your first finger of the 1st string and the 7th fret. Basically 2 notes out of a D chord, and then hanging on to that note at the 7th fret, reach back to the 3rd fret. So we've got the clash here of an F sharp and a G, the equivalent of an F sharp and a G. So everything I'm going to be talking about in here is with respect to being in the key of D, even though we're really in the key of, got it? 3 frets higher, F. And drop D tuning. We don't want to think of this as dropped F tuning, but that's what would be more appropriate, maybe. There is, he does a little variation. The song basically is, I mentioned it's a ballad style song. It's just telling a story. It goes straight through from top to bottom with very sad story. Typical of a lot of old English ballads that did not end well for Romeo and Juliet and other folks like that. But he has a couple of variations that he brings in the 3rd and 5th verse where we hear it. Basically, the chord progression is what I just played there. So really just fingerpick through that, but it's much like the introduction. There's the chord progression. But in the 3rd verse, he introduces a really cool idea. Where we've got this descending bass line that happens, and then John does that again in the 5th verse. So, and we have a nice little variation that happens in the solo where we hear this. So, we'll get to all that stuff in this lesson. And I think that's it of what I needed to talk about in the beginning. Well, it is kind of an interesting story how the lyrics and stuff came about. Steve Gillette had a sister that did get hurt, a sister named Darcy. Not fatally. 12 years old, fell off a pony, kind of embarrassing. And he told his friend Tom Campbell the story, and Tom started digging up places in and around where he grew up, the Walker, the Carson Valley Plain, Virginia City, all this stuff in Nevada and the eastern Sierras. So it's kind of cool that it has these references to real places, although we also hear that the Walker River doesn't run down to the Carson Valley Plain. Okay, who cares? Too much info. All right, coming up. Get your guitar in drop D tuning, put a capo at the 3rd fret, and take a look at the chart that just has the chord progression and the intro, but we'll talk about the chord progression first and how to finger some of these chords in drop D. They are not tricky.